Hey everybody, welcome to Drive Thru Review 358. Today we're going to talk about the Staufer Dynasty, published by Z-Man Games. Plays 2 to 5 players, and the designer is Andreas Stedding. So you may know him from Hans Teutonica, which came out about 6 years ago now, and also Firenze, which came out a couple of years ago, which was a minor hit, didn't have a lot of distribution. So this is a straight up Euro game, lots of cool mechanisms and ways to get points and things, loosely tied to sort of, the players are kind of following King Henry VI around and sort of exerting dominion, kind of, bringing the kingdom in order, and you kind of get his favor, of course, while you do that. So let's just jump into what all the mechanisms are. Now, the first thing you're going to notice is this large wedged board, and these are modular pieces, and these are double-sided pieces. Each side is going to indicate the number of players it's used for. So, example here is a 4 and 5 player side on this side. And you go ahead and randomly sort these, and then wedge them into the center of the board. And the center of the board is really the turn order track. Players will take pawns in their color, and the setup guide gives you a very simple way of setting up turn order to start the game. The other thing you're going to do is randomly distribute these point markers, and these points are going to be distributed at the end of rounds when you score a given section of the board. You'll also shuffle up this pile of treasure chests face down, and then you'll stick them underneath the various treasure icons on the bottom of each of the wedges. So you're going to have an assortment of these going around the whole board. Next, you'll set up this round track, and each of these is made up of 3 different pieces in the 5 rows. So always in row A, you're going to have one of the locations or wedges on the board. And you're going to sort those out, and you'll have 5 rows of those. And that's going to leave one extra that you don't use in the game, but this is going to tell you, in this case, Aachen, the starting location where the king pawn will be placed. Now let's take a closer look at the round track. The second part is made up of these B tiles, and these are going to go here in the center of each of the rows. And the third section of each of the rows is going to be the same, except for you can see here the number of spaces the king will move at the end of each round. And then finally at the bottom, there's a little reminder of some endgame scoring that'll happen at the end of the 5th round. Next, you've got the supply track here, and I'll explain this in a little bit more. But you can see you also have treasure chests that are put underneath of these spots. Finally, the game comes with a variety of cards, and so some of these are going to be hidden scoring cards that you get points for at the end of the game. Some of these will be face up. There's a few different ways to set this up. So the rule book itself is very simple, very straightforward. The actions you take are, you'll see here in a second, are really simple. Now, the whole real crux of the game, what's going to change it up from time to time, is everything described here in the supplement. Now, what this does is describes all the iconography on the chests, what the cards do, and all that kind of good stuff. And so you're basically going to be putting workers down around that main kind of wedge center board, and then taking actions and getting bonuses and sort of trying to combo everything up and plan your actions for where the king might be, where the scoring might happen, and different things like that. So let's take a look at what you do on your turn. So to start the game, each player is going to have 4 envoys and 1 noble in their color available to them. The rest will be off into the general supply, and players will need to take actions to get them into their personal supply. So if we take a look back here at the central turn order track, you can see you have 2 possible actions on your turn. You've got the supply action here on the left, and you've got the deployment action on the right. So working from the top down, players will take actions. So first, let's take a look at the supply action. So the red player will take their pawn, and they'll go ahead and move it to the first slot on the supply action spot. And then they'll select one of the supply actions on the supply board. And this is very simply just the way that you get new workers into your personal supply. You just choose one of these spots, and in this example you get 1 envoy and 1 noble. And of course you're going to take the chest underneath that particular spot. And I'll go over what the different chests mean in a minute. Now let's take a look at a deploy action. In this case, the green player will take their pawn, and they're going to actually move it to the bottom of the deployment track. Now you can see in this case, the first 2 players to take the deployment action actually get a bonus envoy into their supply immediately, which will be available. So let's take a quick look at how these actions will affect turn order. So here's how it might look at the end of the round. Some players have done some supply actions or varying numbers of deploy actions. Now you're going to take the supply action pawns and go ahead and grab all of those and move those to the top of the turn order track. So effectively, by taking supply earlier than deployment, you're going to go first or earlier next round. And then we're going to take all of the pawns from the deployment track and move those underneath the existing pawns. So effectively, if you take deployment earlier, you're going to be going later in the following round. So obviously the deployment action is the heart of the game. You're obviously just going to take supply when you need to get more workers, and those workers you're going to deploy out onto the central board. And you're going to score a lot of points during the game on the board, grabbing chests, and you're going to have different scorings at the end of each round. Now, the hand of cards that you get are going to score at the end of the game. However, as the king kind of moves around and as you score, you're going to clean up workers, and workers are going to come off of the board actually. So in a sense, scoring points during the game is the antithesis of scoring points at the end of the game. So you've got to balance out very distinctly, as opposed to many Euro games, scoring during the game and also at the end of the game, and really trying to balance that. I know a lot of Euros do that, but here it's very stark. So that's very interesting. So what does it mean when we want to deploy workers? Well, you're always going to consider the area that wants to be scored and where the king is. Those are your two basic considerations. So we can see here for the first round, we're going to score the Palermo section, and we're also going to score the area that has the most workers in it at the end of the round. So you're always going to know one location that you're going to score for sure, and then the other is going to change kind of based on what players are doing and maybe where the king is and things. So let's say we wanted to deploy a worker over to Palermo. Well, here you can see that's actually across the table from where the king is. So you have to make payments of workers to get to the location, as well as activate the location once you get there. So in this case, we'd have to pay 1 worker, 2 workers, and 3 workers to arrive at the location. You're always going to pay these workers in this sort of clouded area, starting from the position of wherever the king is. Now we have to activate one of the spots. Well, here you can see a spot that has the noble. And of course, these require a noble to be placed there, but you can also see the number next to it, in this case is 6. So this is the total number of workers that have to be paid to use this particular spot. So you put 1 worker here, in this case we'll put a noble, and this counts as one of the 6 workers. So we'll pay that worker there into the exact slot that we want to use, pay an extra 5 workers to total up to 6. So that's really all you do when you deploy. You're basically just grabbing one of those spots, and what it's going to do is going to allow you to get some area control at the end of the round. So you can see if we score Palermo, we're going to consider Palermo and who has the majority there. And you're also going to be able to take the chest there and activate some other things, and you're going to drive your decisions based on your end game cards, as well as some of the cards that will be available to choose, and so on. So let's look at all the different ways you're going to score points, and then you'll kind of start to realize, oh, this is why I would actually move here. So the first thing you're going to do is grab a chest underneath whatever spot you actually chose. So in this case, we'll choose this purple chest here. So let's take a look at a scoring situation. Here you can see the yellow player has 2 of their workers, 1 envoy and 1 noble. The blue player has the same, 1 envoy and 1 noble, and the green player has an envoy. Now, for purposes of scoring the majority, the nobles actually count as 2. So the yellow player has effectively 3 workers, and so does the blue player. But the yellow player has the worker to the farthest left, so they're actually going to break the tie. So they will be in first place, blue in second, and green in third. And that's going to bring us to these random score markers that we put out earlier. Yellow will get 6 points, blue will get 5, and then anybody else after first and second place that has at least 1 worker is going to get 4. So in this case, green actually has 4 points. Now each of the different locations has a little special ability that's going to activate, and it's different for each location, but for an example, everybody that has a worker in one of the spaces here will get an extra envoy. Back over here in Aachen, it actually tells you to draw treasure chests equal to the number of players and then kind of draft them based on who had most control in this particular region, and so on. Now, one thing that you have to keep in mind about all this is after you've scored a particular region, you're going to remove all of those workers back into the general supply. Now, why is this important? Well, at the beginning of the game, as I said, each player is going to get 3 different end-game bonus cards, 1 of each type that you can get in the game. And for each of these, you need workers remaining on the board at the end of the game. So if you're scoring in the game and get your workers wiped off, that makes this difficult to do. So let's take a look at the first type. These are these blue pattern ones. So you can see here with this 7.1, if you have at the end of the game a worker in 2 zones basically across from each other, you're gonna get 7 points for each setup you have there. And so in this case, if you had 2 workers in each of these 2 zones across from each other, you'd score it twice. Or it's possible to also have other configurations. So you can score this multiple times. This next one shows us we get points for having workers on any of the spots that cost 4. So you can see they're just above there, a spot that costs 4 to put workers in. So for each of those, you get 4, 8, 12, 16, and so on. And finally, the last type is just having a majority in the region. So for example, here, if you had the majority in Milano, you would get 12 points. If you were in second place, you would get 6. So there's a real balancing act, as I said before, between scoring points during the game and then getting those big bonus points at the end of the game. Now, there's a lot of special abilities abilities and things to help you do that through the treasure chest and through some other cards that are going to be available. So let's take a look at the chest first, and then some of these bonus action cards that might be available to give you special abilities. So the first type of chests are these brown chests, and these are just basically victory point multipliers. So if you have one of these at the end of the game, you get 2 points, whereas if you have 5 of these, you get 20 points, and that's clearly indicated here. And then after that, if you have more, you just start a new set. Next to these orange chests, and these you'll just score immediately and then in discard. For example, here, this one will just give you a new noble worker immediately, and this one will just give you 2 victory points. Next, we have these turquoise chests, and these are either going to be worth 1 point at the end of the game if you don't use them, or you can use them for the special ability, which is what you want to do. And when you use them, you actually will have to discard them. So I'll just show you 3 examples here. This one, when you use it, it actually allows you to move to a location without having to pay workers. So you can jump to a location and then mark it and control it and just pay the workers to take control of that location. This one here allows you to take control of a location for 1 worker, basically the worker that you put in there. And you don't have to pay any more workers above that. Finally, this spot allows you to take one of the supply action choices of your choice, but you can actually take a treasure chest underneath a different spot. Finally, the last type of treasure chests are these purple chests. And again, these are going to be worth 1 point at the end of the game unless you discard them for their ability. Now, for every 2 of these treasure chests that you have, you can discard them and select one of the special ability cards that will be face up in the game. Now, in every game, there'll be a stack of these victory point cards going from most to least, and it depends on the number of players what's in there, but you can spend 2 purple chests and just take straight up victory points off of one of these cards. You can only ever take 1 card from the stack, and you can see these have the little blue seal on them. And we also have some of these special ability cards. And I'm not going to go over all of these, but you can see some of these have a blue seal and some have a red seal. The rules recommend playing with just the blue seal. I actually say I would ignore that and throw the red seal ones in there. They're slightly more interesting than the blue seal or basic seals. So in addition to the victory point cards, which I showed you, these of course have different special abilities. And there's a quick index. Again, I showed you that sort of leaflet supplement to go over all the different special abilities, but there's 2 of each of these, and you stack these up. You'll have 5 of these types available in the game, and they're going to allow you to break the rules much like the turquoise chests themselves. So that's the gist of the game. I'm not going to go through all the different cards. There's a lot of different permutations, but that really is the game, is what cards are dealt out or what configuration you choose, because the game gives you some kind of setup guides like, hey, for your first game, use the ones with the blue seals. And in your second game, take this one, this one, this one, and these kind of work cool together. So you can see different combos, or you could just do it randomly. But again, the real trick of the game is moving around, scoring during the game, but also having enough workers left over to, you know, kind of put some out and then take firm control of those spots, you know, so you can get the end game bonuses. So what I think of the game, I mean, it's tricky. I really enjoy the game, and it's like a lot of Euros that I've seen as well, but I can't tell you what Euros is like. So I would say if you are a fan of Stefan Feld, if you're a fan of Andreas Stedding's other games, I think you really get a kick out of it. It really is a big brain crunch. There's a lot to really consider where other players are going, because, you know, you want to get to the good spot, but the good spots cost a lot, and you need to take, you know, worker actions to get more workers, but that's kind of a wasted action. But if you don't have a lot of workers, you're going to run out of workers really quickly. Then you're not going to be able to do all the cool stuff you want. So you might debate, do I take a round where I just take a bunch of workers and don't really score any points that round? Well, you could be giving up a lot of points to somebody. So you got to be careful about what other people are doing and at least kind of make them compete a little bit. So there is a definite level of interaction, because it's really at heart an area control game with a very funky sort of, you know, wheelhouse thing. I don't want to call it a rondel or even a Mancala. You could kind of call it a Mancala, but it's just a way of tracking, you know, which workers that you're spending. And then what's going to happen is as the king moves around, they'll collect those workers. Those will actually go back into your general supply. So that's something else to keep in mind, is as the king moves around, it's like, well, he's going to move through here, so I'll get these back. I will have those next round. So you can kind of see, again, there's that sort of strategic, you know, thinking that needs to happen. I haven't seen a lot of AP with the game, frankly, kind of initially, but you kind of get the hang of it, and you're just like, okay, well, I'm just going to kind of do this. And it's very quick and easy to play. Either take workers or you deploy. So that's also nice. I mean, that's a good, you know, feather in its cap, there's a lot of strategy, but your decision is like basically two things: take workers or spend them somehow. And you try to get the bonus points from the brown chests, you try to set yourself up to score the end game bonus points. So it's got a lot of that kind of point smorgasbord kind of thing happening there. So I highly enjoy it. I like the configurability of the different cards and all that stuff. I would say on player count, I think my favorite way to play it was just with more than two. I don't really have a favorite beyond that. But with two players, it's okay. I've only played it one time with two players, but I kind of want to play it again. It was kind of like, well, I was teaching the other person, so, you know, it was kind of funky that way. But you do flip the boards and things change up and the points change up, and basically everything in this game is double-sided. The wedges, the turn order track, the little victory point tiles that you put on the board itself and all that stuff. So it is scalable pretty well to that. And everything is broken apart, like how you can break apart that round track, you know, with these three pieces here. And so this, you know, this little configuration here that you get with those three pieces is pretty cool. So there's definitely a lot more plays in here. I've only played it 3 times, and you know, I could see myself playing this at least 10 more times, you know. So I'm a big fan of this kind of real number crunchy wheels, mechanisms, Euro stuff, you know, grinding together. But it's got that sort of, you know, okay, do I go here for the chest? Do I do this? Do this? I score all these points all these different ways. So if you're a fan of that style of game, definitely check it out and go for it. It's a very unique and different, you know, at least mentally, it kind of touches some different synapses than, you know, a lot of games. I hate to like make those comments, like that really tells people nothing. But if you like the number crunchy Euros, this is another one that you can investigate and have fun with for sure. So anyway, take a look at it. Thanks.